There you go.
Just go, honey.
Okay, so 3 types of relationships that are on the planet at this particular junction. When people ask me, is he the one, or is she the one, or is this the thing? First of all, there's a plethora of ones, but you got to define the 3 types of relationships first so that you can choose which one you want, because it's all about choice, right? So there is obligation, surface, and spiritual. So obligation is the old relationship of, I have to marry you for survival, to pay the bills, we have to have children, I have no choice in this relationship, so therefore I have to do this. And that's typically where most people are coming from with a marriage or a relationship, is I'm obliged to be with you because that's what I got. And I don't want to be alone, or status quo says I have to be with someone, or if you were in an arranged marriage, you really are obliged. And so you know what you need to do in an obligation marriage or relationship to get what you need. So if I do this, I get this. If I do this, this won't happen, right? Like, you're obliged to respond and in a certain way to get what you needed. That's an obligation. You're obliged to be with this person. It's not love. Some of them can turn into love, blah, blah, blah. So, and there's great things in an obligation relationship. And that tends to be, a lot of people that live in obligation marriages tend to be from predominantly every culture but Western culture. So you're going to find obligation marriages in everywhere. We have them in Western culture, but definitely far more every other culture is an obligation marriage, because women don't have a choice, so it just becomes an obligation marriage or a relationship. Okay, then there's a surface one. And this is the funny one, because this tends to be predominantly more a Western one. You look really pretty and I look really pretty and we'll be pretty together, and you'll be my trophy and I'll be a trophy, and we'll all go buy pretty things and look really pretty together, and we'll show up and look like the right thing and say the right thing, and we won't go into any depth. And as soon as someone needs to go into any depth, I run away. Because you're so to just stay on the surface. So I dress the right way. I'm not allowed to change. So I always have to look like how I looked when we first met, because it's a surface relationship. You have to look like that surface thing, right? We don't go. Whether it's the man or the women, right? It tends to be the trophy relationship. And there are plenty of women who are now doing trophy relationships too. So where they're not necessarily the trophy, they're finding the boys to be the trophy. So we're creepily role reversing the surface relationship. And that tends to be more in Western cultures or white people cultures, is the trophy issue. But it's everywhere, let's be honest. So then there's the big one, the spiritual relationship. That's when you call in the person who's going to challenge the crap out of you, who's going to push every possible button, show you everything you don't like or do like about yourself and them, because they're going to find every rough surface about you, and then hopefully you use this as an ability to polish each other up so that you find yourself. Because a spiritual relationship isn't like in the movies, like, oh, you complete me and I can run off and blah. That's a surface relationship, and that's like a crock of shit. Spiritual one goes, oh my God, I hate you so much, I want to stab you with a fork because you just showed me how awful I am, and I don't like that you put that in front of my face. But I know that I had to see that, and I really love and respect you at the same time, because you also create the container for me to see that and to fall apart in. And it's a continuous falling apart, so that all of that crap that you've carried from generations and from lifetimes and from bloodlines and from this life can finally dissipate, so you can find your center, right? Because everything's about the opposite, like we're about opposite, pendulum swinging, right? So I have to go way over here to find center. And that's what the spiritual relationship about is. It's someone physically going, oh really? Cool, you're going that way now. And then you go, no, I don't want to, so you go the other way. And that's the hardest one, right? Because it's not fluffy and pretty and romantic, because you become a mess in a spiritual relationship, as we know. So that is like you do. You're a complete mess in your spiritual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't like each other, but you really love each other. And it's this one person that you're like, okay, I'm going to do this with you. Because for women, what it teaches us is that this is a choice, right? Because women have had all their choices ripped away for tens of thousands of years. And so in a spiritual relationship, it teaches a woman, I get to choose. I choose, I choose, I choose. And it teaches a man to become a man. Because let's be honest, there's not many on the planet and you guys are all a bit of assholes. But in a spiritual relationship, it teaches us both to become both a woman and a man. And so a man has to learn to make it worth her while to keep choosing him. That means that he has to man up and become her safe place. He has to help clean her up. He has to become a partner. He has to become emotionally available and aware. You have to make it worth our while to keep choosing you. And in the process, we realize we have to keep choosing you. You are no longer my obligation. I choose to be here with you because I choose to be here with you. So make it worth me choosing you, because I can choose to leave you at any time. That's what the spiritual relationship really starts to teach you, is men have to make it worth our time, and we have to keep choosing you. And in that balance, we become this really awesome, complete, beautiful thing. But it's fucking hard, because you really get challenged with every mommy, daddy, friend, personal, body, sexual issue. Cultural. It all gets thrown at you in a spiritual relationship. So that's when I ask someone, I'm like, okay, what kind of relationship do you want? Do you want a surface, an obligation, or a spiritual? You gotta know what they are.
Yeah.
Because it's fine if you want a surface relationship, right? Tons of people do it. You just get to go be pretty, and you get to go buy pretty things, and you get to do very pretty surfacey things. But you don't really affect the world. You're affected by the world. And then an obligation relationship is, well, it's as awful as it sounds. You're obliged to do what you're told. You're obliged to do what you have to make this function, right? Whether you use, I have children, or I have to, blah, blah, blah. It's an obligation relationship. So there's no growth in that. You're obliged to be here. Now the spiritual one is where the biggest stuff happens, but it's also where the biggest stuff happens. So it's the hardest and creepiest journey to go through. But on the other side of it, you finally get to meet you. You finally get to become a person who affects the world, hopefully positively if you chose the right spiritual one, but you finally choose to affect the world, to change it, to be positive in it, and to finally become a whole person. So that's also part of the reason why most faiths demonize marriage and demonize women, because if we come together, both men and women, I don't care if you're gay or lesbian or any of those, because the same thing counts, because you're looking for your counterweight, then you get to recognize your wholeness through that relationship. And if more people started to recognize that they could become whole through a relationship, not because of a relationship, then we have a whole bunch of whole adults who will actually change the world. And that is why that marriage became an obligation, because if you become a spiritual marriage, then you no longer need the sanctity of the church and blah, blah, blah to control you, because you become an entity unto yourself. And then you have another entity to play with, because they're becoming an entity with you. Ta-da!
Wow, love it.
There you go.